On August 16, there was a ICE HSI raid in West Oakland on the 700 block of 27th Street. The family was interrogated for approximately 4 hours, had property confiscated, and two adult brothers named Santos and Darwin were removed from the home. Santos was arrested. Darwin was questioned. ICE and OPD have maintained that a criminal search warrant pertaining to trafficking was the cause of the raid. And so OPD did participate in some manner, which we'll discuss. And just to refresh everybody's memory, back in July, on July 18th, the City Council approved our recommendation that we sever an MOU with HSI. So this raid happened in the morning. Pertaining to the raid, OPD Chief Ann Kirkpatrick caused 2 press releases to be issued, wrote at least 1 email to the council to inform them of the raid on the same day, and she participated in a town hall on September 6th with Councilmember Guillen and DA O'Malley, where she made further representations to the public about the raid that are captured on video. And the purpose of this fact-finding, what I wanted to do was really find out what sort of due diligence was done up front, what sort of information she relied on, because as you see later on our agenda is Immigration Policy 415 that we previously had come before us. Of the 9 most relevant or material representations made by the chief, my research supports that 6 are false and 1 more is likely false. Since the chief is not here to confirm or deny the remaining 2 statements that are within her firsthand knowledge as to whether ICE called her on August 15th pertinent to a criminal investigation into the 2 adults, and also that they requested OPD help, I'm going to assume that those are true and that they happened. All evidence in my possession, presently known to me, supports that OPD participated in a raid on August 16th that led only to a civil immigration arrest in violation of our sanctuary city policy and OPD immigration policy number 415. I am not stating that no future criminal charges are possible, nor attesting to the veracity or character of the family subject to the raid. I am stating that for unknown reasons, the chief has repeatedly supplied the public with false or incorrect information pertaining to this raid, and thus further investigation by the City Council is required. I'm going to run through the chief's statements and provide evidence demonstrating why I believe they are false or recklessly made, and why we need the City Council since we're advisory body only. At the end of this discussion, I will move this commission to recommend that the City Council demand the chief present a report on this raid to the council at a public hearing, and I request that my fellow commissioners support my motion based on the following facts and exhibits. On August 16th, which is Exhibit A in your guys' packet, OPD released a press release with a really salacious allegation that Homeland Security investigations served a federal criminal search warrant in connection with human sex trafficking of juveniles. It's a very serious charge. They also stated in the same press release that HSI focuses on transnational gangs, human trafficking, human smuggling, child exploitation, narcotic enforcement. On September 22nd, the chief admitted to the Latino task force that she gave the wrong information to the public information officers. The erroneous tweet and Facebook post were soon deleted, but not before local TV stations noticed. The salacious nature of this false information caused local TV networks to go to the home, where ABC, CBS, NBC, and KRON all showed the family's home address on screen. To my knowledge, no apology has been made to the family. Although HSI does focus on the suggested categories, it is not limited to them. It does, in fact, enforce civil immigration law, as occurred here. Our PAC letter supporting the Councilmember Kaplan resolution in July also highlighted this and ICE's willingness to lie to its local partners. As you remember from our letter, the Santa Cruz chief and assistant chief both represent that HSI lied to them about the nature of a raid in Santa Cruz, where in fact HSI arrested folks for civil immigration violations that had no criminal background. HSI's close interaction with the deportation arm, ERO, enforcement removal operations, is not unknown to the public. Exhibit B in your packet is a lot of web snippets I took from the HSI website indicating their involvement with deportation. On August 16th, a second press release was issued that removed the reference to sex and amended the notice to state that the warrant pertained to human trafficking of juveniles, which is still a very serious allegation. The release states the same incomplete portrait of HSI operations. The release also states OPD no longer has a contract to actively participate in investigations with HSI. The chief knew that to be false at the time she made that statement. Notice to terminate had not even been generated. The letter providing the required written notice is dated August 25th. Keep in mind the raid happened on the 16th. The effective date is September 25. That's Exhibit D in your packet. The City Council voted on July 18 and directed the administration to immediately provide the required written notice. This is a serious breach of the balance of powers in our city government, and the administration should be held accountable. The release goes on to state that the department may assist our local, state, and federal agencies when requested as it pertains to traffic control, community safety, and officer safety. The chief needs to provide authority for this statement to the City Council because I find it to be false when it's made with no qualification as to the nature of the act, and it likely misled the Council. Immigration Policy Section 415.4 is clear, and it was drafted by OPD. It states in relevant part that members of OPD shall not use personnel or resources in the enforcement of violations of civil immigration laws, which is what occurred here, and our participation was authorized by the chief per her own admission. I expect that the chief will say she acted in reliance upon representations made to her by ICE, an entity known to lie to its local partners. And as I mentioned earlier, I had hoped that this discussion would reveal what due diligence she performed prior to agreeing to participate in the raid. As to the chief's statement that OPD participation was necessary for public and officer safety, 25 ICE agents with sidearms and automatic weapons were present. There was no hint or any allegations of violence by the family. Exhibit F is a collage of the photos from the agents involved in the raid. And on that note, I do want to thank Indy Bay reporter Dave for jumping on this immediately, for filming, for reporting, and for staying on top of this incident. I find no public safety threat to be present here. On August 16th, the chief's email to the City Council, it's Exhibit G in your packet, restates the press release that she got a call from HSI the afternoon of the 15th that they would be arresting 2 adults for a case of human trafficking of juveniles pursuant to a lengthy investigation, restates the incomplete and misleading portrait of HSI authority and operations, and states the following: I stayed within the constructs of the Council's policy. I'm not aware of a relevant Council-created policy. Immigration Policy 415 was created by OPD. Unless the chief is referring to our Sanctuary City resolution, the most recent and operative version was voted on and adopted before the chief's hiring, November 22, 2016, Resolution 86498. Just reading very quickly in relevant part. Whereas the City Council opposes any Alameda County Law Enforcement Department agency or office to investigate, question, apprehend, or arrest an individual for an actual or suspected civil violation of federal immigration law. Whereas the City Council opposes immigration raids and calls upon the federal government to impose a moratorium. Further resolved, City Council reaffirms the declaration that Oakland is a city of refuge. Further resolved, City Council instructs all departments and employees to refrain from assisting or cooperating in their official capacity with any federal immigration investigation, detention, or arrest procedures relating to alleged violations of the civil provisions of the immigration laws. Further resolved, City Council urges Governor Brown to act with urgency to make the entire state of California into a sanctuary for immigrants, which he did today with SB 54. Further resolved, members of the Oakland Police Department shall not use city monies, resources, or personnel to investigate, question, detect, or apprehend persons whose only violation is or may be a civil violation of immigration law. The only provision I can find that the chief might be relying on, erroneously, is the second to last further resolved. In accordance with state and federal laws, OPD will continue to cooperate with federal immigration agencies in matters involving criminal activity and the protection of public safety. Obviously, no such state or federal law requires our cooperation here, so this provision is inapplicable, even if the ICE intelligence was correct. Courts have consistently ruled that we have no duty to do the Fed's dirty work for them. September 6th town hall video. I don't know if I should take the time to play it. It's been online on the internet. It's very simple. If somebody calls in a question, these quotes, I'll play the video. The first statement is made by the chief in response to a question from the audience. Only one person has been charged with a crime. It's stated in the past tense. Keep in mind, The explanation for the raid was 2 adults in a warrant pursuant to a long-time investigation. I don't know why the intelligence was absolutely incorrect. This statement by the chief was false on September 6 and remains false today. No one has been charged with the crime. On September 22, the chief stated to the Latino task force that ICE represented to her that criminal charges could occur in the future. In addition to the false accusation of sex trafficking of children, the chief has again harmed this family by falsely claiming that one member was criminally charged. Not even ICE has stated that. Second quote from the same town hall. There is not a deportation matter in this case. This statement by the chief was false on September 6 and remains false today. I represent to you that I checked the status after hearing the chief's statements on September 6. As the documents I'm about to share with you reveal, deportation has always been on the table, has been pending since the arrest, and the chief had no basis to make her statement. I am not stating that a deportation will occur, but it is pending. In the members package here, I list the Executive Office for Immigration Review 800 phone number that I've been calling, and I represent to you that I have access to unredacted information not publicly reported, and that I called this number on September 6th, and I continue to call it periodically to check on the status. My last call was 1 hour ago. Record of Exhibit I in your packet, members, is a record of deportable admissible alien. I am reading in relevant part verbatim. Santos is not believed to be a victim, so this is the guy that was arrested. Santos is not believed to be a victim, and there is no evidence yet that he was a perpetrator, conspirator, or accomplice of the alleged crimes described on the search warrant. Subject has no prior criminal history in the United States. TFO H. Carrasquillo asked subject if he had any legal status to reside in the United States. The subject answered no and was then advised of his arrest. TFO H. Carrasquillo further explained to subject that the officers are with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. TFO H. Carrasquillo arrested subject. Subject was then transported to the San Francisco ERO, which, as I mentioned, is Enforcement Removal Operations, at 630 Sansom Street, San Francisco. Under previous criminal history on that Exhibit I, it alludes to an August 10th, 2007 arrest for trafficking. There was no arrest of anyone subject to the raid on August 10th. We can find no evidence of any trafficking charges on this date in Oakland, and the narrative itself I just read you contradicts this erroneous stray comment on that document. Exhibit J is warrant for arrest of alien. I have determined that there is probable cause to believe that Santos is removable from the United States. This determination is based upon the failure to establish admissibility. The subject either lacks immigration status or such status is removable under U.S. immigration law, and statements made voluntarily by the subject to an immigration officer. The warrant is not based on any allegations of criminal wrongdoing. Exhibit K, notice of custody determination. Pursuant to the authority contained in Section 236 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, I have determined that pending a final administrative determination in your case, you will be detained by the Department of Homeland Security. The office is again listed as ERO. Exhibit L, notice to appear. In removal proceedings under Section 240 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, Santos, you are an alien present in the United States who has not been admitted or paroled. DHS alleges that you are not a citizen or national of the United States, are a native of Guatemala and a citizen of Guatemala, arrived in the United States at or near unknown, on or about unknown date, were not then admitted or paroled after inspection by an immigration officer. On the basis of the foregoing, it is charged that you are subject to removal from the United States pursuant to the following provisions of law, 212 sub A, in that you are an alien present in the United States without being admitted. You are ordered to appear before an immigration judge of the U.S. Department of Justice at time and date to be sent. No allegations of criminal wrongdoing. Santos was forced to spend 2 weeks in a Richmond detention facility, which contracts with ICE ERO, as we all know. He was released on a $5,000 bond on August 30th, which is below average even for a civil immigration matter, further demonstrating the lack of support for trafficking allegations or any violent wrongdoing. At the same town hall, third quote, they went and received services and then left. We had over a dozen cameras, 20 to 30 people witnessing. Only 2 people were ever removed, the one that was arrested and then the other younger brother, Darwin. Darwin was taken to a family immigration office, asked a few questions, including about his existing petition for residency, and when asked where he wanted to stay, he said his home. ICE took him back. indicating that both the younger brother and ICE had no reason to fear for his safety or that he was being trafficked. The younger brother continues to work in the family's janitorial business. So my motion, and we're going to call for public comment first and come back to it. So my motion is that the Privacy Advisory Commission recommends that the City Council exercise its authority to demand that Chief Kirkpatrick immediately provide the Council with a report pertaining to the August 16 raid at a public hearing, and that the Chief respond to the issues raised in this memo. Yep. Seconded by Commissioner Katz. Joe, can you call for public comment, please?
Sure, you have one speaker, Laura Polstein? Sorry, thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for putting together this detailed investigation. I think it's great and absolutely support the motion. I'll be pretty brief. I'm an immigration attorney at Centro Legal. We're one of the biggest providers of deportation defense in the whole state, actually. And earlier this year, we founded, along with a bunch of other nonprofits, a partnership called a CLIP, which the not sole purpose, but one of the main goals is to respond to ICE enforcement actions like this one. And we did respond to this action. So what I'm about to say really just reiterates what you already detailed in the memorandum. The arrest that came out of this enforcement action was a civil immigration violation only. I personally met with the individual at the detention center and confirmed that. The raid that happened, OPD definitely participated. They provided traffic control. We, after this, because we had been one of the ones to respond and we saw how everything went down and how there were these really misleading and basically lying posts on social media by OPD, we requested a meeting with the chief, which occurred last week, and she stated that they would continue to provide traffic control in future ICE and or HSI enforcement actions. And the reason that she provided is that it's a public safety matter, which makes no sense to us. But anyway, I think this is great. This is being investigated and looked into. I think it's ridiculous that OPD acted in the way that they did, and it's a huge problem. We definitely urged the chief in the meeting that we had with her to not provide any assistance or any support to ICE or HSI when they conduct these raids. All too often, it's under the pretense that there's bad people doing bad things and this boogeyman is shaken around, and there's really nothing there, whether it's ICE or HSI. So thank you so much for looking into this.
You have two more speakers, actually. Sorry. Sharon Rose and Linda Olvera.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Rose. I represent Block by Block Organizing Network in Oakland, and I want to thank you for this very detailed report. I've heard those stories from other people, and I just think it's dreadful that the chief is going around without any information and making up things as she goes, apparently. And we need to do something about this, so I absolutely support this resolution, this motion, and it really does need to be aired before the City Council. And in light of the governor's signature today on the California Values Act, you know, it's one thing to call for California to declare itself to be a sanctuary state, which we did, and it now is. And it's another thing that be implemented. So we can't take our eyes off of this just because the governor signed it, however good that is. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Linda Olvera, and I'm representing California Sanctuary Campaign and also Wellstone Democratic Club. It takes a village. Well, here in California, it takes California. Governor Brown has just passed SB 54, signed, and SB 29. SB 54, California Sanctuary, I'm sure you're all aware of it. SB 29, Dignity Not Detention, preventing local group governments from entering into new contracts with private entities for immigration purposes. We have also a significant court ruling the last couple of days in favor of immigrants and bail amount limitations. There were no limitations before. And there are lawsuits now filed to protect the DACA dreamers. California now has a number of sanctuary cities, of course, including Oakland, supposedly. But being a sanctuary city does not stop there. And that's why I'm speaking in favor of the ordinance that you're going to be presenting today. The proposed ordinance before us is to stop the loopholes. And we've just listened to them for the past 10 minutes from Brian. That still exist for ICE to continue its racist and inhumane efforts to eliminate a massive number of immigrants in our country. Kudos to those who have done the research and found these loopholes. Let us be an example tonight for other cities throughout this country to pass similar ordinances. Yes, it takes a village, and we need to continue this effort against racist and inhumane Trump, Homeland Security, and ICE. And I'd like to just read something from the copy of the proposals that I got that I think is very key, but it's not here. It has to do really with all the strategic ways that the Germans used to catch all the Jews. And it was through identification and things like happened with police department and ICE and little loopholes. And the ordinance that you're proposing goes over a lot of those loopholes that keep ICE and the Homeland Security from continuing this effort. So once again, I really respect all the research that went into this and to find out a lot of where all these loopholes are. So we're in favor of the ordinance that you're going to be proposing. Thank you.
Okay, did I understand that at this raid, ICE showed up with a large number of heavily armored, equipped people?
There's approximately 25 people with guns.
Okay, 25 people with guns. Why do you need OPD to direct traffic when you've got this massive firepower out there? And I don't know if this is the correct place to do it, but I would like to object strongly to us cooperating with anyone who shows up with a shirt that says police, ICE, giving us the false impression that these people are somehow connected to OPD. OPD, to the extent that they can, wants to work with the people, and they are being besmirched by these thugs showing up with guns, masks, black uniforms, and their equipment and their costumes says police. And I would like later to figure out some way to set policy for OPD so that they do not cooperate with people who pretend to be police when they are not.
Yeah, I hope I'm not missing this in my print here, but are any of these warrants signed by a judge, or are they all administrative warrants? I haven't seen a judicial, there's nothing by a judge that says there's any probable cause for any criminal activity at any point, right?
Some information is confidential. I have part of the search warrant, and that was signed by a judge. This other stuff you're seeing is administrative.
I think one of the most concerning things is it raises so many questions about the lack of due diligence on the part of the chief to verify. I don't even know if she looked at the warrant. I mean, I think most of this evidence in this memo makes me feel at the very best this was just a either lazy or naive oversight. And, you know, when you look at the warrant, it's completely based on deportation matters. There's no mention of any sort of criminal activity. And I think, yeah, this is just infuriating. I don't know how it would be okay to publicly misinform the public and the council. And I think that I am in full support of this motion, and I really wish the chief was here to answer these questions directly.
Brian, first of all, well done on a fantastic and well thought out investigation. Do you know if anyone from OPD is here to address on behalf of the chief?
Yes, if I could, point of order. I know that Lieutenant Hookfin is here. That was why I was raising my hand. If you want to have him speak.
Good evening. Acting Captain Bobby Hookfin, Area Commander in Area 1. What I can speak on is the direction that we had that morning. The direction that morning was to provide public safety, traffic control. And what that entails is we were notified that there were going to be guns involved in this particular HSI incident. We have a duty to protect the public. With traffic control in that that particular area and in that morning, you have a lot of foot traffic, you have a lot of vehicle traffic. And the last thing that we want is to have unsuspecting pedestrians walking through or driving through that particular area, and they're conducting some type of raid and gunfire, whatever the case is exchanged. If we're not there, that can happen. So we're on the outskirts of this, and they're doing whatever they're doing, but we're there to prevent some kind of chance contact with the public and HSI. So that was our sole basis of being in that area at that particular time.
Thank you, Lieutenant. And I accept that as a.
Was there a SWAT call out on this?
There was not a SWAT call out.
No.
There was patrol officers.
All right.
Hold on. Go ahead.
When you say that there was the thought of guns being involved, is that because you knew that there were going to be armed officers, or was that because you had any indication that there would be armed suspects?
Well, they're armed officers, HSI, and we were advised that there was a criminal search warrant.
So it wasn't that the family was armed?
I have no idea.
Okay. And so my problem, and I believe the Latino Task Force raised this with the chief, there's 25 minutes of video that I could find between the networks in Indy Bay. The officers are standing right in front of the house most of the time. Occasionally they're at the end of the block, but most of the time they're just right in front of the house, and traffic and pedestrians are going by freely. So I don't know who we're protecting there. Secondly, if the family was violent, all the HSI guys are inside and OPD's outside, so we're not protecting their safety either, because a gunfight could have happened inside. And so I'm not saying there's no public safety concern here at all, but it's just not passing the smell test. And maybe that's a training or just clarification that those guys were supposed to be on the perimeter, but you watch all that video and they're just standing right in front of the house. They're talking to the ICE agents. So visually, it looks to the community that you're participating or condoning the action that occurred.
And I can understand that. Once the officers are in the HSI is in the house, we're not going inside that house. They're doing whatever they're doing inside that house. But we're on the outskirts to prevent any type of chance confrontation between the public and HSI. So we're that buffer. So unfortunately, it may look, the optics may look that we're participating in that, but we're protecting the public's interest and their safety while they do their thing inside.
Yeah. So just to confirm, so OPD was there to control traffic and protect public safety, and just to hear a final answer, at no point was OPD involved in any enforcement of civil immigration issues, as far as your knowledge?
Absolutely not.
Are you aware as to whether the chief reviewed the search warrant before?
The chief would have to answer that question. I don't know.
So you're not addressing any of the stuff that was presented earlier tonight. You're only talking about the involvement of OPD on the street, what happened and what didn't happen.
Correct.
Right? So because that is really not really what's being discussed here, by and large, the way I'm reading it, at least.
I'm just here to address OPD's involvement on that street on that particular day.
But here, a lot of these
I can't
assertions were around what she said, for example, when she said it, and what has she said. So, okay.
I
got
can't
it.
address that.
No, that's fine. I was just making sure
Okay.
that, we were addressing the same thing. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Just wondering whose jurisdiction it is to investigate why a very large number of very heavily armed people show up, what clearly turns out to be a house with a family and a couple people in it without any arms. Who gets to check on whether, are these people not doing their own due diligence? And I mean, why do you send 25 heavily armed people to go to somebody's house where there's a family and a couple guys? This sounds awfully weird to me, but it may not be in our jurisdiction.
I'm only trying to get a picture in my mind of what this looks from a tactical situation, but from what I'm hearing, we have vehicle traffic passing in front of the house, and we have ICE officers doing whatever in front of the house. It's 25 of them. There's no SWAT call out, so I'm going to presume no one thought that anyone in the house had a long gun, something that's going to pass through the wall on the house.
I can't answer that question about HSI. So here's
No, that wasn't HSI.
Oh, okay.
HSI question. That was more of an OPD
So-
question. So I'm saying, from your point of view, or what you observed, what did the perimeter look like for the traffic control? Because if traffic is passing, I'm trying to see what the ground units are doing. You get my question?
So-
what the ground units are doing to vector away traffic?
Correct. So I'm not positive, but at the particular point, they could have been clearing the house or finishing clearing the house, and we could, at that point, we collapse the perimeter, and then we'll make sure that we're clearing the scene and letting them know that we are clearing the scene, and everything else is on them. The safety standpoint, from OPD standpoint, is done, and then everything else is left to them.
Can you speak to how routine it would be for OPD to provide this type of traffic control and public safety protection for other federal agencies? I know we're here speaking about an ICE action, but there's other federal law enforcement agencies, say the FBI, for example. How routine is it that OPD would be there to do traffic control for any other type of search warrant?
We are contacted constantly by outside agencies letting us know that they are conducting a search warrant at a particular location, and we will evaluate that situation and provide public safety traffic control for those outside agencies.
So you say that's pretty a routine thing across the board for federal agencies?
Well, I'm just agencies in general. A lot of times it's other city agencies that may be coming into our city. And a lot of times federal agencies really aren't obligated to let us know, but we do appreciate when they do let us know, because when guns are and public safety is involved, we want to be involved in that to ensure public safety. So it's quite often.
And again, when you say guns are involved, you mean that guns are suspected to be involved by the suspects, not that there's armed officers at the scene. Because if there's armed officers at the scene, then guns are involved. But you're saying that if you suspect guns are involved by suspects or the people articulated in the warrant.
A lot of times it's conveyed to us that there's a criminal warrant with a high risk of guns being drawn when they're serving a search warrant in a house.
Is it assumed that if it's a criminal warrant, the assumption is that guns may be involved?
There's not an assumption. We'll talk to them and figure out exactly what their wants are and what we can do to provide public safety on our end. Not getting involved in their search warrant, but just providing the public safety component on our standpoint.
So, I understand that the chief would have to answer for the comments made in the town hall, but, there was mention of a rescue of victims and they received services. And as eyewitnesses, did you see who are these victims and did they receive services? Like, who is the chief referring to? Can you confirm or deny that happened?
I cannot speak on that.
Was this a no-knock type of warrant? Do you know?
Do not know.
Did ICE specify when they sought OPD assistance that they believed guns would be involved? Was that explicit in their request?
It was not requested directly to me, so I don't know.
Is there any way to find out?
I suppose so, but it's not like I can call anybody. I don't know.
Who normally determines whether or not there would be a possibility or a high risk of there being guns in the execution of a warrant? Is that something that the federal agency would relay down to you, or is that something that a determination is made in OPD?
It's probably in the redacted version of the warrant that you did not receive, because there's a lot of information, confidential information, that's in that particular warrant that the judge signs.
Okay. In returning to my motion, I kind of think this is a really big deal. Thanks, Lieutenant. I'm good. And it's kind of occurring to me, like, along with the MOU not being severed, that we have a balance of power issue in Oakland. I mean, the council could wag their fingers. I don't think they could really do much more than that, you know, as far as, like, other than, like, power of the purse. But I think OPD has an internal complaint system that I would want to file and just get this escalated. And, you know, maybe I'm being overly aggressive, but with the whole Jasmine thing not coming to the attention of the monitor, I don't know how else to kind of get this stuff out in the open. So I just think I want to make a little amendment, and so see if you'll support this. The Privacy Advisory Commission recommends that the City Council exercise its authority to demand that Chief Kirkpatrick immediately provide the Council with a report pertaining to the August 16 raid at a public hearing, that the Chief respond to the issues raised in this memo, and I guess that I be authorized to initiate, I guess it's an IA complaint or a formal complaint. So that's my motion. Seconded by Commissioner Suleiman.
Just for clarification, do you mean that the complaint would come from the Privacy Advisory Commission?
It's coming from me. It's coming from me. I don't need to drag you. Any further discussion?
Could I just, as your staff, and again, to your commission, I'm just your staff. I mean, if you as an individual want to file a complaint, I think that's totally within your right. I think the resolution that you have is to the City Council as an advisory body.
Yeah.
I don't know that you would want to modify that to. It's as if the Privacy Advisory Commission is endorsing you filing an individual complaint. I'm not. You know, I just want to make sure. I know there are some concerns about the jurisdiction, if you will, of this commission over this topic that I know I've raised with you, that we've heard from the police department. I think certainly how Oakland assists when an outside agency is conducting an operation in Oakland is a topic of concern. It reminds me of the Oaksterdam raid several years ago when the DEA raided Oaksterdam, and OPD provided traffic control, and there were huge protests, and it was actually very helpful to have OPD there because they prevented DEA agents from arresting angry Oaklanders that were seeing Oaksterdam get raided. So I see some relevance to the operational procedures, but yeah, I just want to share that. For the commission, I think making a motion that a report come to the council, that makes sense. I don't know if adding endorsement of an individual complaint.
I understand what you're saying, and I don't need to drag my fellow commissioners in. I'll do it on my own. It's my memo. So we'll just go with the original, and I'll just file a complaint. So the Privacy Advisory Commission recommends that the City Council exercise its authority to demand that Chief Kirkpatrick immediately provide the Council with a report pertaining to the August 16 raid at a public hearing, and that the Chief respond to the issues raised in this memo. So that returns to the original. Commissioner Katz, which you seconded. So I guess you're still a second. Any further discussion? Anyone abstaining? Anyone opposed? Okay, by consensus.